On December the 12th, 1939, a section of 26 and 8/10 miles of 10-inch crude oil pipeline was literally blown out of the ground in 8 minutes' time, with explosions or detonations running up to 60 to 70 per mile. This section of line is in Shell Pipeline Corporation's McCamey-Cushing 10-inch, a part of the system that furnished crude oil to Shell's Wood River and East Chicago refineries. Specifically, the damaged section is between Archer Station in Texas and Ryan Station in Oklahoma. At the time of the explosions, compressed air was being used to push scrapers to displace the crude oil in the pipeline. This practice, with some variations, had been used by other organizations in the industry without mishap. The reason for displacement of the oil with air was to find and repair external corrosion leaks in the pipeline. The soil was extremely dry, and leaks in the line had been difficult to locate. The oil loss was significant. On many occasions, oil would disappear into the dry, cracked ground without evidence of a leak on the surface. The decision to use air to displace the oil and to test the line for leaks was based upon: number one, the failure of locating all the leaks by other standard methods tried. Number two, the lack of available water for pressuring the line. The difficulty and time limitation in obtaining water from the Brazos and the Red Rivers, the only sources where it was economically available. The ease of locating and detecting leaks by using air odorized with ethyl mercaptan. Number four, the ease of detecting air escaping from leaks by using an audiophone. Number five, the disproportionate cost of other test methods. And number six, the presumption that displacement of oil by air was a common and safe practice in the pipeline industry at that time. About 2 weeks before the air test, Go Devil type scrapers were run in the oil stream to clear the line of debris. The first scraper struck in one section of the line and was freed by striking the line with a skid. It was believed an accumulation of debris had stopped the scraper. Other scrapers ran without delay. The air procedure was started at Baylor Station, and a 38-mile section of the line to Archer Station was air pressured, all vacated, and leaks found and repaired. The procedure was to insert 2 hard rubber disc scrapers into the line. The hard rubber discs were the same diameter as the inside of the 10-inch pipe. The following slide shows the one damaged in the explosion. Air was then forced into the line back of the scrapers by 5 air compressors, with a capacity totaling approximately 600 standard cubic feet of air per minute at a maximum discharge pressure of 90 to 95 psi gauge. The lubricator of one of the compressors was used to feed ethyl mercaptan into the line. As the air column moved the scraper through the line, maintenance men followed them to keep track of their position and to search for leaks. As each successive point of leakage passed, with the resulting loss of air, the scrapers moved more slowly and finally stopped 27 miles from Baylor Station at 10 a.m., December the 9th, 1939. 8 leaks had been found. They were dug out and repaired with leak repair clamps, whereupon the scrapers resumed travel. Plugging the 8 leaks permitted shutdown of 3 of the 5 air compressors at Baylor. The scrapers then moved at 4 miles per hour, which was double their former speed, and reached Archer Station, 38 miles from Baylor, on December the 10th. The following day, the leading scraper was removed and reinserted in the upstream side of Archer Station. It had further cleaned the line by carrying into the scraper trap and strainers a large number of rocks and metallic objects and a substantial amount of sludge, or BS. Most of the latter, largely iron oxide, had been rolled into small pellets about the size of birdshot. Next, a Go Devil type scraper was inserted at Baylor Station behind the air column at 6:15 p.m., December 11th, and crude oil was started through the line and back of the scraper. Now the air was being forced out of the Baylor Archer section by the oil, and in turn air was being forced into the Archer-Ryan section of the line. The maintenance crews followed the scraper all night, averaging about 2 miles per hour. Oil was pumped into the line at Baylor without interruption until 8:14 a.m. on December 12, 1939. The 8 a.m. gauge showed that just over 19,000 barrels of oil had been put in the line, pushing the rear Go Devil scraper to within 1/2 mile of Archer, and the front scraper to within 9 miles of Ryan. This morning, the morning of the accident, the district superintendent was walking with the crew. One man was walking 25 feet ahead of the scraper, 2 men with the scraper, one on each side of the line, and one of them being the superintendent. And the 4th man was driving the superintendent's car about 20 feet behind the scraper. The owner of the ranch, which the line traversed at this point, was standing on the brow of a hill, 3/4 of a mile away, where he had a full view of the explosion scene. The foreman had driven up and left his truck and was walking toward the group about 500 feet away at the time of the explosion. Suddenly, the scraper stopped. The superintendent motioned the car driver to stop, which he did, and shut off the engine. The 2 men knelt down to try to pick up any sound of the scraper. Within an estimated 10 to 15 seconds, there was a muffled explosion right under them, and almost immediately a second explosion. The first muffled explosion occurred at the scraper and merely bulged the pipe, but did not burst it. The second explosion, or rupture in the pipe, occurred directly under the car. The car, with the driver in it, was hurled ahead in the direction the scraper had been traveling and over the heads of the 2 men listening for the scraper. The car landed on its side 145 measured feet from its previous position and about 14 feet off the pipeline. When it landed, it was facing in the opposite direction. While the car was in the air, a third explosion occurred toward Ryan Station about 145 feet from the second explosion and just 20 feet from where the car landed. Almost simultaneous with the third explosion, a similar eruption occurred some 240 feet back of the scraper and in the direction of Archer Station. Other explosions then occurred, traveling at a high rate of speed, almost the entire 27 miles back to Archer Station. At about the time of the explosion, the foreman glanced at his watch and noticed it was 7:50 a.m. He ran to his truck, drove a short distance to the company telephone line which paralleled the pipeline, tried to ring Archer Station, but was unable to get them because the explosions had torn down the telephone line. However, in the other direction, the telephone lines were intact, and he was able to get the dispatcher at Cushing, who called Archer on the Bale system. While the dispatcher was issuing instructions to the Archer Station operator, the line blew up in the station yard. The records at Archer Station showed there was an elapsed time of about 8 minutes between the initial and final explosion, indicating an average velocity of about 300 feet per second for the 26 8/10 miles. The previously mentioned ranch owner, who was standing on the brow of that hill with a good view of the scene of the first series of explosions, stated that they threw up great clouds of dust and traveled faster than an airplane. He was about 3/4 of a mile from the line and saw the last visible eruption go over a hill to the west, a distance of 1.5 miles, before he heard any of the first explosions. 2 men who worked for the gas company were driving down the highway. They said the explosions threw dust and white smoke 60 feet in the air and looked like a locomotive coming down the line belching white smoke, but traveling a whole lot faster than a locomotive. There was only one slight injury in this accident, and it was a minor one, and it wasn't the driver of the superintendent's car. He wasn't injured at all, but he was plenty scared. The injured person was a WPA worker on his way to work on the road. He drove into one of the big craters that had blown out in the pipeline road crossing. He was taken to a hospital, examined, treated for minor injuries and shock, and dismissed. However, his 1931 Studebaker car was pretty well wrecked. Several theories as to the cause were examined. However, the theory that seems to correspond most precisely to all the known facts is that the scraper, propelled by air, estimated to have been compressed under approximately 125 pounds gauge, at the point of the explosion, struck and attempted to pass a large wooden object in the bottom of the line, namely a pipeline skid, originally 4 by 4 by 36 inches, but tapered to 2 by 4 at one end due to wear. The scraper was an insulated metallic object by virtue of the 4 neoprene discs and the oil film on the wall of the pipe. This object was electrostatically charged by slight leakage of high-pressure air at high velocity. The wedge effect of the wooden obstruction was sufficient to fracture the sleeve on the shaft of the scraper, thereby presenting, at the moment of the fracture, 2 very clean and bright, irregular metallic surfaces, which were ideal for the discharge of an electrostatic spark, and which had not previously occurred in this section of the line. The resulting spark ignited a combustible mixture of hydrocarbons and air, which started the instantaneous propagation of a flame in both directions and caused a muffled explosion at the scraper. The first explosion was not sufficient to rupture the pipe, but bulged the bottom of it. The flame, traveling at the relatively slow rate of approximately 2 feet per second, ignited a highly combustible gaseous mixture approximately 16 feet back of the scraper and produced an extremely violent explosion which deformed the scraper plates, burst the pipeline, and threw the automobile 145 feet along the line toward Ryan Station. Furthermore, it produced tremendous pressure waves along the inside of the pipe in each direction, resulting in a series of explosions which reached Archer Station, 26 8/10 miles to the southwest, about 8 minutes later. In addition, it caused an explosion some 145 feet toward Ryan Station. However, the waves from this explosion encountered a body of oil, which prevented their further propagation in that direction. The reactive pressure surge through the blasted open end of the pipe carried with it a few barrels of oil, which were sprayed against the car and upon the superintendent and also upon the nearby ground. It is evident from the resulting explosions and detonations that the line contained a concentration of hydrocarbons in the explosive range. This accident, and maybe 1 or 2 similar since, as well as Bureau of Mine experiments, have proven that the use of air under pressure to displace liquid hydrocarbons in a pipeline is not a safe procedure. Instead, the use of water or an inert gas such as nitrogen is recommended. You can be sure that in our safety procedures, we forbid the use of compressed air to vacate pipelines after they have been in liquid hydrocarbon surface. I will now show a 16 millimeter silent film of the explosions along the line. The film was made by holding a camera outside a patrol plane. It will give you a good idea of the overall damage. The following 2 by 2 inch slides will give you a further idea of the destruction of the pipeline. Note especially how the pipe is shattered and torn into grotesque figures and shapes.